Welcome to the Anthem VIP demo, or whatever this is. Hopefully I'm able to record this. It didn't have to send user end agreement or anything like that, so I assume this is okay. What's up everyone, Michael here, and today we're going to be talking about the Anthem demo, which I'll say has me in two faces. One, game has some surprises. Number two, performs like ass, gameplay's boring, and I'm kind of disappointed. It's kind of one of those games to where I'm not necessarily sure what to think about it. Here's the main hub. I do want to end up talking about all the different aspects, and I do have other footage that I did capture, so when I'm standing here, I'll just throw up footage and like throw up other stuff so you can actually see what's going on. So I'm going to be editing this a little bit more and stuff like that, just so you can see the demo, because everything in Anthem takes a really long freaking time, which is super annoying. And I don't like that aspect to it, but we'll talk about that in a bit. First off, let's go ahead and talk about the PC specific stuff, because I am on PC, and the problem with Anthem at the moment, with the demo at least, is the fact that both versions, both the console and the PC version, perform absolutely terribly. Talking about the bad stuff first, the performance is abysmal, and loading times are really long, and they have a tendency to just lock you up into the loading screens and disconnect you all the time. I'm just going to scroll through all the settings. I'm not going to talk about things specifically, but you know, everything you would expect from a PC port is pretty much here, which is pretty nice. Rebinding all of your controls and such is here, and multiple volume sliders, and you can even like change the impact and stuff like that, which is super nice, because most console games end up having this really terrible effect. You'll also notice in the background some of my effects are turned down. And this goes into that performance issue, to where basically the game is not performing whatsoever. Now keep in mind, this is not really technically advertised as a beta. Yes, it technically is a beta in the form of what they're talking about, and they're like, oh yes, this is a beta, guys, so don't end up scrutinizing us for anything that's wrong. But this close to launch, I really hope they can actually step up their game on optimizing the game, and I hope that the game is actually like completely done, and they're not doing the whole, we're just going to release the game in early access sort of thing. I really hope that the game is actually complete, and all they have to do until release is optimize, because it needs optimizations out the wazoo. Number two, with that problem, is the fact that it also ends up locking up and crashing, and the servers suck. Now, it is obviously a limited time demo, and they invited a lot of people to end up playing it, and so there is just a ton of people on, which means that you're going to be able to find people, of course, but you're going to get a laggy experience, and that will most likely be fixed in the future. So I'm not going to scrutinize them too much for that, and I'm not going to attack them for that. What is annoying, however, is even when you're playing single player, you have to communicate with the server in some sort of way, or something is going on there. Either that, or the game where I'm perceiving as lag, it's actually just the game being glitchy. I have had certain cases. I'll end up throwing up some footage if I can end up finding it. I captured a lot of footage. I've been playing this all day. I had a lot of cases to where I would run into a wall and then teleport, or I would go down to like a Grand Slam, which I'll talk about the gameplay and stuff like that a little bit later. But I'll go to the Grand Slam, and then I'll just randomly teleport backwards or over a wall or in some other location that I just wasn't aiming for. And it's very strange and jarring. Other players move quite smoothly, actually. I think they have some good lag compensation when it comes down to player movement. And maybe, again, this is just the game being glitchy and not actually lagging. Another problem with this optimization thing is it takes forever to load on any system whatsoever, which is annoying. Unfortunately, Origin wouldn't install on my SSD, so I have to run this on a hard drive, which definitely attributes to that. But other people are reporting that it takes a long time to load. And on console, load times are upwards of 10 minutes, which is ridiculous. So yeah, optimization is absolutely abysmal, and I'm going to say, just off of that alone, I would wait to see how this game goes. Do not pick it up at launch just for that simple fact. If you're excited for this game, wait, because the optimization, if it is one of those cases to where I'm going to get locked in this loading screen, aren't I? Frickin' hell, I think I got locked in this loading screen. It has to do, I think it has to do with just not being able to connect to the server or something, because my hard drive isn't acting. Like, there's nothing being read from my disk right now. It's just frozen, and this has happened like 12 different times. It's about 50% of the time when I try to load into a level, it crashes like this. And yeah, so all right, cool. I will be back with my footage eventually. Good thing I captured a bunch of stuff to show off in the background. But yeah, so basically, because of these minor issues, oh, and it didn't close when I actually closed the game. It actually just stayed in my task manager, which is another problem I've had. Now, these types of things can be fixed, but I'm gonna say, because it's so close to launch, you're gonna wanna watch out for that type of stuff. Now, when it comes down to actually, you know, bad stuff inside the gameplay, My main problem with the game actually doesn't have to do with the gameplay at all. It just has to do with the fact that it's kind of boring. As in, I got extremely bored of this game extremely quickly, and I've only been playing it just to try and see more of it, because there are some certain things I'll talk about in a second that are actually pretty dang interesting that I'm really, really excited to see more of. But it's also one of the main reasons why I'm not going to be picking up this game at launch, and I'm not necessarily excited to try it. I just want to see where it goes. I'm interested in where they allowed BioWare to take this game rather than where it ended up, because when it comes down, yes, I want to continue my expedition. This is 90% of my experience so far. It's just loading screens, trying to connect to the server. You have an existing expedition. Would you like to try and go reconnect? And then it crashes. Super annoying. Sorry, I might be a little upset about that. I don't like my time being wasted. I don't have a lot of it. But yeah, so mostly my main problem with the gameplay is that it's just kind of point and shoot at things and click a button whenever the timer runs out. And that's pretty much it. And it doesn't really expand beyond that. The best part of the game so far for me has been able to fly around, which they showed off in the early trailers of the game, and that is actually really, really fun. You're able to just jump up, jet around, and movement is actually pretty dang fluid and really, really fun. And turning on those jetpacks and just flying through the air is incredibly satisfying. And you're able to actually go like along mountainsides and find little crevices to hang off of, and you can actually climb up walls and things, and that is really, really fun and really, really cool. Unfortunately, that cool stuff isn't really implemented into the gameplay. Okay, cool, I actually loaded into the game, and there's a yellow guy. Oh, sorry, you're a low guy. Yep, people online. Anyway, so yeah, being able to fly around and just kind of go up and like find little crevices on the mountain up here is pretty dang fun. And I actually got into a situation, my footage was unusable because basically I wasn't able to capture very much footage of this game because of, you know, performance issues and stuff like that. It is destroying my system. I forgot to say my specs. I'm running on a GTX 1070 and a 6700K CPU for i7. So basically, I have a really expensive system and it shouldn't be struggling to run a game like this. But when it comes down to it, that's actually really, really fun. Unfortunately, when it comes down to gameplay, it is extremely generic and kind of freaking boring. You end up just running around, just shooting at things constantly, and sure, you're able to actually fly into the air, but it ends up being fairly limited as well, as in you have the jetpack that ends up heating up and cooling down, and so when it's heated up, you can't actually use it, and it takes quite a while to actually cool down. There's some cool effects to that, to where you can end up jumping into water and find other types of effects and things that actually reduce it, and enemies can actually set you on fire, basically restricting your movement a hell of a lot just because basically you're overheating, which I think is a really cool idea. Just the execution so far isn't particularly interesting, which means that when it comes down to gameplay, the most interesting part of the gameplay itself doesn't actually get used all that much, and some of the controls are a bit finicky as well. As in, to activate your flying mode, you have to go into a jet, and then you have to aim to actually stop and look around. And this actually carries over to a lot of the other gameplay aspects as well when it comes down to controls. A lot of it's just kind of obscure and strange, but of course that will change over time. As you play more, you'll get more and more used to it, and you're also able to jet around and stuff like that. That actually, originally, when I first ended up trying it, I was like, this is kind of jank, but then as I got used to it, I learned how the system worked, and I learned how to end up kind of making use of it. So that could just be, you know, again, early experience type of stuff that will improve over time. But when it comes down to the gunplay, it's just kind of boring. You get several different types of weapons, but they're all the generic types. You get the assault rifle, you get the sniper rifle. I'm personally using a shotgun and the footage you're watching, and of course there is obviously the assault rifle and the light machine gun and stuff. And it's just kind of the generic weapons, and they function exactly how you'd expect in a futuristic sort of setting. And the most disappointing thing about it is that this was supposed to be one of those big RPG sort of things going in to where it's like you get different weapons and they have different stats, but this kind of leads to a lot of the game just feeling like a grind fest to where you're just kind of shooting things over and over again to wait until their health bar empties out, and the AI never does anything interesting. The only AI that I found that did anything even remotely interesting was a boss battle that we actually had, and that actually just amounted to occasionally he would shoot this random dart that would knock you over. And that was pretty much the extent of it. And you could actually listen to its like sound cues and stuff like that, which was pretty dang nice. And so it actually had like a certain element of like, hey, if I listen to this enemy, I'll know what it's gonna do. But the rest of the gameplay just feels boring. The AI just kind of runs at you and just shoots at you randomly, and enemies are just kind of have pinpoint precision as well. Like I was talking about with that dart thing, it locks onto you and it shoots you. Snipers, again, this does make it mean that, you know, actually taking cover is kind of important. which is pretty cool. I kind of like that aspect, and there was a lot of cases where I was like dashing around and jumping behind cover and trying to find my best way around things to try and not get my butt kicked and revive allies and such as that. But when it came down to actual, you know, gunplay, it just, I don't know, it just feels flat. And sure, it's not bad. I'm not going to say the game is bad. In fact, it performs as you would expect. It is what you would say it is. It is a AAA third-person shooter with some flight mechanics. But unfortunately, I can't say much more about it. That's pretty much it, and it really doesn't have much to it. And there is some collection RPG type of stuff as well, as in you're going through, you end up collecting loot, so you get different types of weapons. There's an interesting semi-story going on, although the voice acting is all over the freaking place. I'm going to attribute that to the beginning of the demo. I really hope that's not the case in the final version, because it does go from, oh, this voice acting's not bad, to, oh my god, did they record this a year later while he was on the toilet or something, because it is abysmal. It goes from one perfect line, and then it goes to another one that just sounds like it was recorded in a bathroom stall. I am not kidding. It is horrible, and it is very jarring. But when it comes down to that, that's actually where my surprise came from this game. Not the actual gameplay itself. It's not bad. The gameplay is fine. It is what you would expect, but it doesn't do anything interesting. And oh my god, the enemies just disappeared. This is another one of those cases to where I'm not sure if that's the game doing it, or if that's because my ally went too far and it's just despawning them, or if it's because it's lagging. There's a lot of enemies that just kind of stand around, especially in the demo. I think that's because of lag. But yeah. But yeah, the gameplay itself, it does have the abilities and stuff like that. You know, again, look at the gameplay stuff if you're actually more interested in that sort of stuff, because I am going around. Melee is fairly restricted, which I kind of wish it wasn't. Your melee has a cooldown as if it's a type of ability, and you do have an ultimate ability that you're able to use, which is just stand there, aim in a direction, and it kills things that are in that direction. And nothing really feels like it's in total control. The best ability that I've found so far, oh great, another loading screen. By the way, the game isn't open world, it is all instance based, which means you're going to be looking at a lot of loading screens in certain missions. The first mission that puts you into the game put me in 3 different loading screens, and it seemed completely random. The first time I ran into it, I was like, wait, what? And it just like was very unceremonious. I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, so you get the different abilities and stuff like that, but the best ability I found was actually one of the homing missile things that you actually start off with, because it is just incredibly satisfying to use, because the visual effects, when it comes down to the graphics, are pretty dang nice. There's a lot of fire effects and a lot of things going around, exploding and everything. I wish it ran at 60 FPS, but you know, we'll take what we can get. It looks pretty. And so that is actually one of the best ones, because you're actually able to pinpoint exactly where you want it to fire, which means that it's actually quite satisfying to use. And that's actually pretty fine. But that's the only ability that I've found that actually allows you to really kind of feel in control of an ability. Everything else just feels bland and boring. And that's basically everything about the game so far, really, to be honest. And that's kind of unfortunate. The scenery is awesome. Like I said, the graphics are great. And the surprising part about me, going back into that, is actually some of the story and stuff. Now, BioWare is known for making stories and talking about, you know, making interesting worlds and characters and etc., etc. And that's pretty dang cool. And that's what I want to see from BioWare. That's why I played Mass Effect to begin with. I didn't play Mass Effect for the gameplay. The gameplay was ass. It was not very enjoyable. But when it came down to the story and engagement, that made the gameplay interesting, because you were doing the gameplay for a purpose. And there was sort of this aspect where you have your comrades and you were kind of going through it. Now, Anthem obviously isn't going to have that level of gameplay aspects into its actual, you know, storyline. You are in an online multiplayer shooter, but hopefully BioWare has been able to actually stretch their wings a bit when it comes down to the story aspects of the game. While you're wandering around the village, there are random NPCs that you can end up talking to, and while you're talking to them, they'll have little interesting stories, and you get multiple dialogue choices, and they'll be like, oh, I'll remember that, or hey, maybe I'll contact you in the future for help. And in the game's story, you are playing as a freelancer, and this could very easily be used as a mechanic to get new missions and actually change up the types of missions that you're getting. The main story is obviously going to be fairly linear. They've already talked about that in the past, and so basically we have a linear story that we're going through, which I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the main story being linear, and we do have set characters. For example, you are playing Faye, I believe, if you're playing the female one. And so you do have set characters and stuff, so you're not necessarily playing you are playing the freelancer, whatever the freelancer is within the storyline that they end up giving you. Oh, Jesus, I got frozen. So, yeah, that's interesting. And I think that they can do a really, really good job of that if it's actually executed and they were allowed to actually work with it. Because if they weren't allowed to work with it, that means that the menial voice acting and the absolutely terrible plot points that they end up hinging on just will fall flat. If it doesn't have any gameplay integration, oh my goodness, he's just standing there. I'm gonna shoot you. Okay, now he's hitting the ground. All right, I've never seen that thing before. The demo does only have like 4 missions, by the way, and I'm playing the 3rd one at the moment. So yeah, if they're able to stretch their wings with that, that'll actually be probably the biggest surprise from this game so far. And I mean, it's not necessarily a surprise, it's BioWare, but with the current AAA market that we've been seeing lately, to where a lot of developers are just kind of being stricken of their freedom and then getting shut down just because, why the heck not? Let's try and make this company that's known for story-based experience make a multiplayer shooter. Ha, that worked for Bethesda, right guys? Yeah, so basically, the story will most likely be the most interesting part of the game, in my opinion, so far, from my impressions. The gameplay itself, interesting. It's fine. If you enjoy this type of game, it won't be a bad time. And the flying around is actually pretty cool. Going through the environments is really, really cool, and that's cool. And the story is semi-interesting, and if they're allowed to actually do what they are best at, really, then it'll actually be really, really fun and interesting to see where that story goes. And if that can integrate into the story itself, then that'll be really, really freaking cool. I just want to melee things. Why can't I just melee things nonstop? It's very annoying. I'm not playing particularly well in the background, by the way. So yeah, that's my concern. That is my impression of the demo so far, is it's just kind of boring. It's a thing that exists. There's some interesting stuff that they have with the world. The design is kind of here and there. It's spotty, I would say, when it comes down to the environments. Some of the environments are interesting. Like, this place is kind of cool, but it is mostly just, here's a bunch of platforms that you can use to kind of look around and shoot at things. And that's the main problem with Anthem so far. This could end up changing. It is one of those RPG type of experiences where you're getting a bunch of different loot and you get a bunch of different weapons, and maybe the gameplay formula will end up mixing up from that. But so far, haven't been seeing that. And I'm pretty disappointed in that. But overall, enjoyable, I guess. If you're looking for another AAA game, Anthem will probably be better than some of the other ones, I would say. My impressions of this are not nearly as bad as I expected them to be, but they're also not as nearly as good as I expected them to be. There were certain aspects of the game I wanted to be really impressed by, such as the flying mechanics. I was satisfied with it, but I wasn't impressed. I've seen other games with flying mechanics, and while this one's fun and enjoyable, it also doesn't offer anything new or interesting. Bosses and gameplay elements are just kind of boring and generic, while I was hoping for a little bit more variety in the RPG aspects of it. And maybe this is just from not being able to play the game, but you get different loot and you get different equipment that you're able to equip you on your mech thing. I think it's called a Lancer. And so that's kind of what you're able to do with that. And so you're able to actually customize your character quite a bit. The problem is that customization isn't particularly interesting, which leads to the game just feeling bland and boring, and that was a huge disappointment to me. And then when I actually got into the story aspects, I wasn't expecting a multiplayer-focused shooter to actually have any story whatsoever. But, to my surprise, the side story stuff was actually fairly interesting, and talking to them about being a freelancer and just getting new freelance jobs would actually be a pretty cool concept. Of course, the demo doesn't execute that at all, as in it has a few set missions from the main story that you're going to be playing through, such as the one in the background. But overall, that could actually be implemented into the main game, and that would be really, really cool. My final verdict on this one is definitely going to be wait and see how this goes. I would not pick this up at launch, especially with the current AAA market. Microtransactions and the like have already been confirmed to exist within the game, and there are a ton of customization options that could easily exploit, especially when it comes down to progression. They could easily do things like, let's say, loot boxes, even though they said they weren't. We know that they can add them later, so I would wait. I would wait on Anthem and see how the game ends up going. Obviously, this is just my impressions based on the demo. I will not be picking up the full game because, again, this is not a game I was looking forward to. There are other games on my list that I find more interesting and more important. I'm not a huge person for the whole AAA experience, but if you're looking for a AAA experience and Anthem looks like it's up your alley, it is sci-fi, which we don't see a lot of, but don't expect a whole lot different and unique about it until the full game is out and people have been playing it for a while, just to see what they end up doing. There is potential, I will say, for this game to be absolutely fantastic and be one of the best AAA games ever made. Chances are it'll just be another one. So yeah. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this one. And of course, if you like my styles of content, you can end up checking out my website at michaelpstanich.com. If you got a chance to try out the demo, or maybe you're watching this a little bit later and you're actually playing the full game and some of my predictions were right or wrong, I would love to end up hearing back from you. So make sure to leave those in the comments. And of course, if you want to talk more about Anthem or maybe find some people to end up playing with in the future, you can check out our gaming Discord called The Broken Chat Box. Links to all this stuff in the description. Obviously, this is another type of style of video I am kind of sort of trying, is in a quick talk about. I was going to call it like, let's talk about this, and not even like play a game in the background, but I don't know, I just decided to try this out. So we'll see how this ends up going. If you like this type of format and you like this more structured setup, then do let me know about that, because I do want to find out different types of styles of content to end up putting on the channel and try to find better directions for the stuff that I am running. And of course, make sure to share this around as well, because I don't get a lot of people looking at my stuff, and it would be quite honorable for you to show me to your friends. I would love to be shown to your friends. Also, special shout out to the Eurlo guy. He's playing here. I hope that he doesn't have the push to talk on or something like that, or the voice on, and I left it on because I have everyone muted in this game. So, apologies if I'm just like rambling in his ear. I apologize for that. Sorry, yellow guy.